of spiritual things, people are spiritually pissed about Gran
Spiritually.
Turismo 8. Or I'm saying 8, Gran Turismo 7.
Yeah.
People are pissed. And while I do think it's a matter of, there's a lot of other things going on in the world. So it's hard to get mad about all this, but I get where people are coming from. So just kind of give some background on what's going on with Gran Turismo 7. It was released about 2 weeks ago, and it was released to pretty good acclaim, 87% on Metacritic. But reviewers did not get a chance to review the microtransaction setup. And that has caused a lot of controversy because now cars that would cost, I don't know the game economy, but cars that would cost a small amount of money, in game money, now cost a lot of in game money. And now people are being forced to pay for them with cash if they want to unlock them in a reasonable amount of time. In addition, they put the single player as an always online type of single player. And due to this, whenever there's like a server outage, you can't play the game at all. And so there was a big server outage and it was out for an entire day. So obviously Twitter, obviously all the social medias were buzzing about this.
Yep.
And it's caused them to release on the PlayStation blog, they released an update about the situation. They've given players $1 million in credit. They have promised a whole bunch of improvements to the microtransaction system. But my question to you, Ben, especially since you are in the video games industry, is this a case of them not asking for them asking for forgiveness instead of asking for permission to do this? Like, are they just asking for permission? Are they just like, you know what I'm saying? Are they just, they knew this was gonna happen, and so they just, they wanted to just get all the game out and everything, get the good reviews, and now they say, oh, it's easier to apologize. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying, and I completely understand the perception of them trying to get one past the goalie. Essentially,
Hmm.
um, I get that. This, I would not assume that that is the case here. Just to give the benefit of the doubt, this sounds like classic live service woes to me, and I would you know assuming the best out of this situation, right? I
Right.
would bet money on on the idea that there was a discussion during development of like, oh no, we're screaming toward launch. We need resources in a few key areas. We've got programmers here and there, but we don't have enough for these areas. Can we redistribute from other places? Where could we slacken in order to invest in other areas? And they're like, well, nobody's gonna care if our microtransaction store doesn't ship at launch, right? So let's take the programmers that were focused on implementing their microtransaction store and focus them in on something else, so we can get the product feeling good for launch, and then we'll focus on our microtransaction store. I can absolutely see that being the case, where they make a cost benefit analysis and say, let's push this. Let's push this as a feature of the game that we're not going to focus on
I feel you.
in the immediate. And but then it has the unintended consequence of making people feel like, hey, what the hell? This wasn't in the pre-release version of the game that reviewers had. Like it's hard to imagine that they didn't understand the optical issue with that. Um, but I don't really buy the idea that they needed to slip one past the goalie in this case.
I
Would
don't know.
would would onerous microtransactions have changed the needle on the review scores? What do you think about that?
That's a good question. Um, I would imagine that I don't think it would change the scores, but I do think I've seen some reviewers like put disclaimers in the reviews. Like they did that with this, where it said we weren't able to review the microtransactions. They put a lot of reviews put that disclaimer there. I would assume that would not affect the scores too much. Because I mean, that's not I don't really I can't remember the last time where a game was ding points because of its microtransactions per se. Unless it's something like Star Wars Battlefront 2,
Yeah, that was the
where
last prominent
yeah,
one.
that's the last one where it's like, yeah, this is legit pay to win. Like
Yep.
that's not what this seems to be. This seems to be I want to unlock the cars I want to unlock like I could in the previous Gran Turismo games. And this new microtransaction system that they've implemented has made that harder. That's what it seems like to me. I don't think that's something that should affect review scores, but I do think it's a little crummy that they've made it harder to unlock cars that used to cost like $2 of of money before. So I definitely see it on both sides. I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world, but it is interesting because I don't remember Gran Turismo ever being a franchise that has controversy around it. It seems like it's one of the goodwill franchises we have, especially for Sony.
Yeah, I'm I mean, I'm not plugged in enough to Gran Turismo to know, but
Me neither.
this does seem like the most smoke there's been around a one of these releases. Um, it does, and Matt Bliss brings this up in the comments. They're trying to tap live service as a function and tripping over a botched patch. It does seem like they're trying to address some of the issue and doing it ham-handedly and kind of exacerbating the uh, the perception of a kind of greedy money wringing happening here. I I can say with certainty that it's very difficult to understand the line between, is this a fun long term chase for players who want to invest time in the game, and then like giving players who don't have time but have money, because that's, I mean, like I remember having these discussions with other people in the industry when Battlefront 2 came out, and I was all up in arms about Battlefront 2. At the time, I was like still in college. I had no money. So I'm coming at it from that perspective. I had time to play the game too, you know? So I'm coming at it from that perspective. I'm like, oh my God, EA is like, you have to play for 15 hours before you can unlock Luke Skywalker, or you pay, X amount of money to do so. And I remember talking to somebody else, and he was like, "Yeah, that's great. I'm so glad I can pay money to not have to grind." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "I have money. I just don't have time for that shit. So, like give me Luke Skywalker." And I was like, "Okay, okay. This
That's
is this is like a bit
interesting.
of a perspective change on that. It's like it's not it's not as simple as um, you know, uh it's not as simple as like trying to wring money out of everybody. I
Yeah.
really think the difficult balance there design wise is like, how does this feel like a thing you need to earn to the people who don't buy it without feeling onerous, right? What's
Right.
the line? What's the line there where it feels like fun to earn, and it takes time.
Yeah, I feel you. I think the microtransaction discussion is a very interesting one because I feel like with some games it's in there, but it doesn't like really mean anything. For example, I play a lot of sports games, and I feel like sports games are the ones that have the most microtransactions in them in terms of like that's how their economy is generated. Like 2K, I play a lot of 2K. 2K will sell X amount of copies and sell X amount of dollars, and then three times that amount will be made in microtransactions. And people will complain all the time about microtransactions in the game. And I'm like, I just play season mode and I play against friends. I never have to pay for anything. So I never have any complaints. Like I just like 2K. But a lot of people have an issue with that, with this idea of paying for something after you play the game. And I'm like, I mean, I think it depends on what game it is, of course. And I see with Battlefront why it's a little more a bigger issue. But could you not unlock any heroes without paying money or putting that amount of time?
No, it was just, if I recall, it was just like the most iconic heroes. It was the fact that like it was the fact that it was Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader that you had to grind for. I
Like
think that rubbed a lot of
make
people the
General
wrong way.
Grievous, make General
Yeah,
Grievous
exactly.
super long. You know,
I
yeah, like
yeah, I
I
think
get it from there.
I agree there too. I think a better system. typically people a design fallacy I think a lot of people fall for is like lock the best stuff behind the hardest grind so
Mm,
that you get the most reward for the biggest input. But I don't actually think that's the way that makes everybody feel the best about the experience. I think typically you want to give the biggest bang for your buck rewards earliest to feed this desire to play to earn things, and then the more minute particular stuff gets trickled out the further the grind goes. I think that's typically a smarter way to handle that type of thing. That way, the people who are most invested can fine tune what they're doing. They have like 20 different heroes to pick from instead of a pool of five different heroes. But the least invested can have a more complete experience for them from earlier on, right? And that like that drives further engagement, I think, rather than preventing it.
yeah. I think another solution, because just going back to sports games, what Battlefield could have done better is they should have just had a mode that was just like my team. Or how I think Madden same thing, where it's just like trading cards essentially, and you like get them, and when you get them, you unlock characters with specific attributes. I feel like they could have done something like that and nobody would have been mad, and just kept the original Battlefront gameplay the same. I think they could have done something like I think the problem was that was just the multiplayer in general, right?
Yeah, it was not just the heroes with Battlefront 2, it was, all of the progression system. Like, the
Hmm.
progression system was totally loot box driven, and I think that was probably the biggest thing. The most difficult part of that too is that the whole thing was RNG based off of loot boxes, then you could buy the loot boxes to have a better chance of getting, whatever upgraded stats that you wanted to get. So they had to pivot the whole game to a basically a level progression model so that you could deterministically unlock things, and then the loot boxes became for just cosmetic stuff. So I think that was a case where they like it was an inappropriate application of loot boxes.
Yeah, and we would say with Gran Turismo, it doesn't look like anything that egregious. It just looks like a big component of the game, which
Yeah,
was unlocking these cars, filling up your garage. Also another issue was there's a change in selling your cars as well. That
hmm,
I don't think you can sell your cars anymore or something along
interesting.
those lines. So it's like a lot of little changes that have made it so yeah, just go buy some more cars. Like yeah, you can grind for 15, 20 hours, or you can pay this $40 for this
Yep.
Lamborghini or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, I it's a really interesting conversation because I don't know how Forza Motorsport handles that. Because that would be like the direct competitor. And I don't
Right.
know how they handle that per se. I don't think it's that much better.
Yeah, I think
But
I think the always online component too is definitely frustrating when it seems kind of needless when there's modes that like should be able to function perfectly well offline, and yet your options when you're playing offline are incredibly limited in GT7 as far as I understand.
yeah, I heard I don't think it's any. I've got when the
There's like a,
servers
there's
were
like a
off.
free drive kind of mode, but pretty much everything else is locked by
Mm.
connectivity.
Yeah, when the servers were off, I don't know if that free drive mode was accessible. But I know that people were saying they could not access the game when the
Yep,
servers were. And I'm like, that's a problem. Like
definitely.
that's something that should be addressed. So it seems like they're on top of it. I don't know how much you can change as far as patches go. I don't think you can turn it from a always online game to a sometimes online game with
Yeah.
patches. But hopefully they address it because I mean, look, Polyphony Digital is one of the. I mean, they're not as name brand, I guess, as a Naughty Dog or a Insomniac, but they're one of PlayStation's biggest studios.
Yeah, and one of their most important too, I think, for
Yeah,
sure.
and so I will give them like you. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't think this was they weren't trying to be EA. I don't think it was anything like that. But I do think they wanted to bring a more updated monetization strategy to the Gran Turismo series. Because as far as I know, with GTA Sport and GTA 6, I played a little bit of GTA 6. Um, and the microtransactions were there, but it wasn't something I felt was necessary.
Yeah.
And now it appears to be a little more necessary. So hopefully they get it right in the future. Still has an 87%. So shouts out to Cole. I think he picked I think he picked that. So good pick. Good
Yep.
pick. Also, we need to talk about the latest announcement from Cyberpunk developer. Oh, blank on the name.
CD Project Red.
CD Projekt Red. Thank you.
Yeah.
So they released a little teaser. They released a little image of Lynx, I believe, announcing that they have officially begun pre-production, I believe, on The Witcher 4,
Yeah.
which I think is at some parts it's exciting, at some parts it's a little scary. Where do you fall? Where do you fall on the spectrum?
I think this game is very far in the future. So I'm not terribly concerned about like cyberpunk rubbing off on this game necessarily, if that's what kind of what you're getting at here. Like importing the woes of cyberpunk onto this new Witcher game.
Mhm.
Uh I certainly hope the company has learned that they can take their time to get this stuff out and that ultimately that's going to be the best strategy. They didn't learn the monetary lesson for Cyberpunk, but hopefully they learned the public perception lesson. Um, they're a good developer though. I still believe that even though Cyberpunk didn't come out fully baked. They're an ambitious developer. They're a capable developer, and they've been working on proprietary tools for all of their games. I think their first game was built on one of BioWare's engines. So the original Witcher was, but then after that, I think they have been working on proprietary internal engine, and now they are moving to Unreal Engine 5, which
Mhm.
is interesting.
Exciting to
Interesting to
me.
me. Yeah. Again, this game is still many years away.
And the end of
I
the lifespan of the console to me. Like
Yeah,
that's where I'm sensing at
yeah.
least.
I'm thinking like 5 years. Yeah, yeah. Um, so I'm not, I'm sure it's going to look great and all that, but there will have been other impressive Unreal 5 games before that. What's interesting is that Unreal is a well supported, very versatile engine with lots of external documentation and like ease of access, ease of on ramping, that kind of thing. That's one of the big wins that you get with Unreal. You get, you know, the full force of Epic Games, and the tools that they make for or that they use on their games, that they make to use on their games. So that should give people a little bit of hope, I think, as far as the technical stability of the game is concerned. Um, it should be easier for them to thread the needle between technological advancement and stability, using a more known entity like Unreal. So that's interesting to me.
I'm with you on the optimism standpoint. CD Projekt Red has had a very eventful past 2 years, to say the least. Cyberpunk didn't come out to the greatest of reception, but that had less to do with the game as a in a vacuum, as opposed to the other factors of just the bugs of everything. I think the actual game that they crafted was great. And so I think that The Witcher 3 was great as well. I can expect this game to kind of continue on that. I would hope that the bugs are going to be less, is because even the Witcher 3 had a lot of bugs. So I'm hoping that moving to a more supported engine, I assume, because I believe Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk, those are on proprietary engines, right? Ones that they created. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping that them moving to gonna probably be the industry standard engine by that time. Like we're gonna see a lot of games come out on Unreal Engine 5 by that point. I would hope that that helps with that, but it's a far ways away. We'll know when we see it more. I'm excited because the story for Witcher 3 was, to me, I mean, that's to me the best Witcher story in general. I've read through, I didn't play 1 and 2, but I read through the stories, and then I've read the novels by the original author. And so I thought that The Wild Hunt was the best of the series in terms of the storytelling. So I'm very interesting to see where that goes in 4. I know that the pendant that was shown is of another school. So the Witcher that where Geralt and them are from, that's like the cat school. And this is going to be a different school that we're focused on. So
Yeah, I mean, they're very particular to say that this is a new saga in The Witcher,
yeah.
which makes me think that it's not a direct sequel of The Witcher 3. You know, the immediate thought coming out of Witcher 3 was that if they wanted to continue the series, they could do it with Ciri. I
Hmm.
don't think that's a good idea because even though she's a good character, she's like super powerful. She's like got like godlike powers, you know.
She's like that. She's like the Avatar, essentially.
Yeah, so it's not going to be the same Witcher type of gameplay with Ciri. Um, she's got like cosmic level concerns where Geralt has, Witcher level concerns. So if they want to keep that same kind of witchery, I've always described Witcher as like a fantasy noir. Essentially, Geralt is like a
I like that.
monster hunting detective where he's like solving the crime scene to find the monster to save the
He
day.
he is basically that world's Batman. Like that's a
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I didn't think of it like that, but yeah, that's a very good comparison. Very
Um,
noir feeling. Yeah, that's good.
yeah.
That's a good way to put that.
So I would like to see them stay in that thematic realm. So it's interesting, this suggests to me that this is going to be a new era, new characters, that kind of stuff. I think Witcher 3 ends that saga beautifully.
Hmm.
So I think they should leave it where it is. It's also interesting going back to the technical side here. Um, their press release specifically says their use of their strategic partnership with Epic Games covers not only licensing but technical development of Unreal Engine 5. So it's a two-way street, really. CD Projekt Red is working with Epic Games, telling them what they need from the engine. Epic Games is working on the engine to bolster CD Projekt Red's development, as well as for future versions of Unreal Engine where relevant. It says
Mm.
will closely collaborate with Epic Games developers, with the primary goal being to help tailor the engine for open world experiences. That's interesting because Epic doesn't make open world experiences. I guess you could call Fortnite open world, but it's not really, not like The Witcher is. So
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't necessarily call Fortnite
yeah,
open
so
world, but yeah, I get you.
UE5 can be used to make open world games, but it's not a open world game engine that you would like.
Are
It's
there
not the
any
first
UE?
engine you would go to for
Are
open
there
world
any
games, I don't think.
UE4 games that are open world?
I'm sure there are. Days Gone's
Oh,
the first
right,
example that comes to mind,
right, right. Okay, that's a good one. I
which
didn't
was
think about that.
also very technically broken at launch. So maybe that proves the point that Unreal Engine is not exactly optimized um, for open world games. So it's interesting that Epic is going to be working with one of the premier open world game developers to kind of suit the engine toward making those types of games. It's also very interesting to me on a personal level. I used Unreal to make a game with branching dialogue, which Unreal definitely does not support out of the box. Um, but the Witcher series and CD Projekt Red's games have tons of branching dialogue. So I will be interested to see if they develop some sort of tools to get branching, RPG style dialogue right out of the box with Unreal 5. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I think this is just awesome. Just I like we all knew that there's going to be a Witcher 4. I think that's just one of the just unspoken things. Like it wasn't announced for a while, but we all just knew that you're not going to just leave it at Witcher 3 and just leave it like that. So I'm excited that it actually exists in its pre-production form right now. I'm hoping that they take the lessons learned from Cyberpunk because I think there was a lot in Cyberpunk that is worth taking to Witcher 4. There's a lot you
Yeah.
gotta leave behind too. A
Yep.
lot you gotta leave behind. But I
Yeah.
do think that there is a good amount of things that I think Cyberpunk improved on it because Cyberpunk's structure is not too different from Witcher 3's. It's in the same planet. It's not in the same state, but it's in the same planet of, there's branching dialogue trees as well. How the quest format is it's laid out very similarly to how Witcher's is. Even like from the open world, like the open world's kind of structured the same. It's just what's in it's a lot different.
Mhm.
So I do think that there is a lot of room to improve. I think story wise will be fine. I think gameplay wise, that could be the next step to me. Because I do think that Witcher 3 going back to it, I was playing a little bit of it maybe like 2 weeks ago on Switch. And yeah, that combat's not the greatest.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I think I liked it a lot more when I first played it, but I do think I've played a lot of games since then
Mhm.
and the combat seems a little stale. You're casting these spells on the ground to trap like when the enemies walk on the spell. I'm like, that was fine for when it came out in 2015. I do think that it doesn't need to be a first person shooter like Cyberpunk is, but I do appreciate all the different ways you can hurt your enemies in Cyberpunk. And I do hope that something of that nature like kind of finds itself in Witcher 4, where it's not just you have a sword, you have spells, just attack it this way. I'm hoping they expand that a little bit. But besides that, I think this is a great, great story. Did you have any final thoughts?
No, that's it for me.